So we're going to talk to Joseph Geevarghese here. He's executive director of Bar Revolution. That's the group that Bernie Sanders set up after 2016 run to fight for progressive values. Joseph, welcome back to the show. How are you?
I am doing well, brother. Good to be with you, Cenk.
All right, great to have you. So let's start with a really broad question first, and then we'll get more specific. What went wrong in this election?
Well, not a whole lot went right. I think we had economic populist candidate who ran. That's Donald Trump. He ran as a worker champion. He went to the Midwest. He said, "Don't sell your homes. Jobs are coming back." He promised working men and women that he was going to fight for better wages. He was going to fight to make sure that they had what they needed for their children to have a better life. And on the other side, you had an establishment Democratic candidate who pulled punches primarily because she was captured by the corporate class and the donor class within the Democratic Party. And so instead of campaigning on red meat economic issues, she campaigned on things like the opportunity economy and the care economy. And, I've never met a person who says, "Hey, I work in the care economy." A lot of the language just did not resonate with blue collar, working class Americans. And I think that is the fundamental problem.
So, Joe, how are we supposed to deal with this issue? Because during the campaigns, they run these terrible corporatist campaigns. And then when, for example, on the Young Turks, we criticize them and go, "Hey, don't go in that direction. That's a terrible direction. Go in a working class direction, economically populist direction." And actually, by the way, for a little while they were, with the price surging proposal, the housing proposal, picking Tim Walz, et cetera. And that's when they picked up the biggest momentum. That's when they had their biggest spikes in the polls. And then they went in the corporatist Mark Cuban direction, which turned in and Liz Cheney direction. Epic disaster. But whenever we criticize them to help the party, people say, "You guys are traitors and you're working with Trump and you should never criticize the Democratic Party." So how do you deal with a problem like that?
Look, at the end of the day, I want to point out one thing that's really important is Democrats need to understand something that's very basic. And it's this: it is a strong labor movement helped build a robust Democratic majority in the United States for decades. FDR did that. But what we saw with Bill Clinton, what we saw with Barack Obama, was a party that allowed good union jobs to get shipped overseas. And what they didn't realize, even though they think they're the smartest people in the room, what they did not realize is that they were undercutting their own electoral chances. And so here's the thing, Cenk, is the challenge for Democrats and the consultant class is they've got to understand that winning depends on organizing your base. Winning depends on building strong unions and empowering regular people. And at the end of the day, that's a threat to their fundamental self-interest. And so they can scream and yell all they want, but history shows that the only way that we have built a robust governing majority in this country is by having working class people organized. And the Democratic Party has walked away from organized labor and the working class, and that's the problem. And we call that out and they call us traitors, and that's BS.
Yeah, so what do we do in the next primary if one of them wins? So look, obviously in the primary, we're all gonna fight for an economically populist candidate, and I'm gonna give it everything I got to make sure, because if not, the Democratic Party's almost dead. Like, so if instead of picking a Bernie Sanders like a candidate, they pick another corporatist like Pete Buttigieg or Gavin Newsom, I'm not gonna support them. I'm not gonna tell people, oh yeah, they're slightly better than the Republicans. No, the corporatists do corporatist stuff. They will serve their donors 100%. I know that for a fact. So what happens if they put us in that impossible position?
Well, look, Jake, we've got to do everything in our power to make sure that they don't put us in that corner again. I think in order to make sure that happens, a couple of things. One is we've got to make sure that we as progressive populists do everything in our power to make sure that we elect progressives into key Democratic National Committee slots, the elections coming up right after the new year. And at our revolution, we're going to be making sure that every candidate that's running is pressed on adopting a progressive platform that includes not accepting corporate PAC money, not accepting dark money from the APACs, from crypto. And so there's some work that we have to do on the inside structurally to make sure that we have a Democratic Party that is not just playing a gatekeeping function for corporate candidates. In addition to that, we're going to have to make sure that we are ready to catch Donald Trump in the big lie. And what is the big lie? Donald Trump ran as an economic populist. He ran as a worker champion, but he is stacking his cabinet with a bunch of billionaires. And from what I can tell, I don't believe, I hope I'm wrong, but I don't believe these billionaires are operating out of patriotic duty. I think they're acting out of their bottom line. And their number one goal is to privatize and plunder our tax money so that they can pad their profits. And it's going to be incumbent on progressives to call out the contradiction when it happens. Donald Trump is not going to be able to serve two masters at once. He's either got to stand with working class Americans or he's going to stand with his corporate cronies. And if we can capture that big lie, I think we have an opportunity to call it out. And then it's going to be incumbent on us to make sure that the corporate Democrats don't put somebody in who's going to be more of the same, right? We've got to make sure that we have a candidate that is like Bernie Sanders and speaks to the true needs of the American people.
Yeah. So look, we got to look inside our house a little bit too. So when you say progressive, Joe, we got to break that down a little bit because I'm in the economically populist wing, and I'm not in the identity politics wing. And so, you know, I'm not interested in well, you have to vote for Kamala Harris because she's a black woman. No, Condoleezza Rice is also a black woman. I don't have to vote for her. It depends on which black woman. If you say Nina Turner, I say yes. Okay, previously you ran Our Revolution, obviously. I mean, I don't have to vote for Dr. Oz because he's a Turkish American and I'm a Turkish American. So I think this identity politics is hurting our cause. I think that kind of identitarian stuff is leading people to think, oh, the progressives are extreme and I don't want to be involved. When in reality, Donald Trump has, in one sense, done us an enormous favor. Yeah, I agree with you, and I've said it 100 times. I think he's a fake populist. That's why all of a sudden all the Goldman Sachs guys are back and all the billionaires are all over his cabinet, et cetera. But the favor he did for us is he gave the Republican base permission to be populists. And so that's a giant gift to us. But we give that gift away, in my opinion, if we go to extreme social issues, play the culture wars, do identity politics. What's your take on that?
Cenk, I'm 110% behind you on this. Look, at the end of the day, the identitarian left and the Republicans, the right-wing Republicans, find common cause, and it's around issues that are important, meaning we do want to make sure people aren't discriminated against. We want to make sure that people have the opportunity to live their lives with freedom. And are unencumbered by state interference. But that being said, the left and the right sometimes find common cause in exploiting those things that affect very small percentages of the American population. And what that does is that really tries to erase class consciousness. At the end of the day, the populist right and the populist left have something in common, and that is their pocketbooks. They're worried about their standard of living. They're worried about the future that they can provide for their family and their children. And when we get caught up in trans bathrooms and other identity issues, we lose sight of the one thing that we all care about, which is being able to make our way in the world financially. And that's where I think it's important for our side to make sure we don't lose sight of that which is important. And that is making sure that the real divide that we focus on is not between gay and straight or trans and straight, but it's between rich and poor. It's between the corporate class and the working class.
So, look, you had in your plank before the elections try to help more progressives get elected into Congress. Makes sense. I formed Just Democrats along with 3 other wonderful people, and that was our idea too. But in my opinion, they went in a little bit wrong direction, and so this whole idea of trust Biden was one of the worst strategies I have ever seen. And so the Progressive Caucus said that, and I think that part of the underlying problem there was that they didn't want to cross their colleagues. And if you talk about structural problems, money in politics, the donor class, and actually serving the average worker, et cetera, you have to get into a conflict with your Democratic colleagues, because your Democratic colleagues, a lot of them are corrupt. A lot of them take donor money and do exactly what the donors say. So is there hope that the progressives in Congress turn around and focus more on economic populism and actually challenge their colleagues? Obviously, I see Bernie's doing it, and it's great to have Bernie back. Oh God, it's great to have him back. And Ro Khanna's doing it, that's terrific. But how about the others? Is there hope to rescue them and get them going back in the right direction?
Yeah, look, at the end of the day, I think that the members of the Congressional Progressive Caucus, who really are the flag bearers for the progressive movement in the United States, are committed to pursuing a robust populist economic agenda. They went to the barricades for Build Back Better. They went to the barricades for the Inflation Reduction Act. And they helped secure over $1 trillion worth of investment in good jobs in the United States of America. The problem, I would argue, is that we never heard anything from Kamala Harris about what Joe Biden was trying to do or what the progressives were trying to do, which is to create good jobs in the United States, to expand economic opportunity. And what I do see coming out of this is an empowered progressive wing, because the progressive wing has been calling out the lie from the beginning and calling out the hypocrisy of the Democratic Party. And so, I think it's a hopeful moment for us, and it's a moment to really look not just at Congress, but also beyond Congress for leaders who can carry our message going forward.
Yeah, and so look, again, I don't want anybody to get confused. I double down on what Joe said earlier, which is that, look, we want to focus on economic populism. We don't want to focus on identity politics, but don't get us wrong. When the Republicans attack based on identity politics, of course we're going to defend our own. I mean, look at us, right? Does it look like we're in the white Christian majority? No, not exactly, right? So and as a Muslim, I'm on the very front lines of it. So we're not giving any quarter to anyone. We're just saying that if there are populists out there, let's bring them in. And let's go in the right direction. Let's win elections by bringing back the populists into the Democratic Party. And so along those lines, last question for you then is, what's the path forward? What is our revolution going to focus on in these next couple of years?
So there's really 3 things immediately. One is we're going to make sure that we do everything to mobilize, to elect progressive leadership into the Democratic Party. If we continue to get party officials that want to raise money from big corporations, we're going to be screwed. And so we need leadership that understands that we need a Democratic Party that is aligned with working class politics in the United States. So transforming the Democratic Party, that's a long-term effort. It's not pretty, but it's a fight that we got to fight, given that the Democratic Party is the gatekeeper to power going forward. The second thing that we want to make sure that we do going forward is, a lot of people are like, well, we're going to have to wait till 2026 and win the midterms. Well, you know what? There's actually hundreds and hundreds of elections in 2025. We're going to be electing city councilors and mayors and county commissioners and even state legislators in certain states. But there's going to be hundreds of elections all around the United States, and we've got to make sure that we focus on continuing to support Bernie-style progressives. We've elected well over 1,000 progressives since 2016, and our goal is to keep building that bench, because those are the people that are going to run for Congress and run for the Senate and eventually run for president of the United States. And then the final thing that we're going to be focused on is, as I said, being ready to capture the lie, being able to engage in organizing when Donald Trump screws up, and he's going to screw up. He cannot move a populist agenda and enrich his billionaire buddies at the same time. And it's going to be incumbent on the progressive movement, our revolution, and other progressives to make sure that we organize to hold up those moments of hypocrisy, because those are moments where we can start to get the right-wing populists on our side.
Yep. All right, actually, I lied. One more question. DNC fight. I haven't made up my mind yet. I have to look at the candidates more, maybe talk to them. There's one thing, of course, I've made up my mind about, which is Rahm Emanuel, and that's a hell to the no. I assume likewise for you, but do you have a favorite yet in the DNC battle?
Well, I'll say Rahm Emanuel is the absolute worst choice for leader of the Democratic Party. He is, in fact, responsible for the mess that we're in. He was a key engineer of Clintonism. He was a key engineer behind the Obama strategy. And look where that got us, right? We have a right-wing rebellion happening in this country. And Rahm Emanuel should not be welcomed anywhere within the Democratic Party of the United States of America. That being said, do I have some favorites? Yeah, there are candidates running not just for chair, but for vice chair that are progressives, people like Jane Klebb, James Zogby, Shasti Conrad, Michelle Dietrich. These are all progressives who supported Bernie Sanders or running for key leadership positions, whether it's vice chair or secretary. And then for the chair contest, I think it remains to be seen, whether Ken Martin is our best bet, or Ben Winkler, or some of the other folks are throwing their names in the ring. And what we're going to do in this moment, Cenk, is make sure that we get commitments from the chair candidates on their priorities. And the biggest priority, again, is making sure we don't allow dark money into the Democratic primary process.
Yeah, 100%, and a fair process when we have the presidential primary, and not the usual cheating towards the corporatist candidate that they do almost every time. And again, guys, the cheating is not in the actual vote counts. It's in things like when the debates are set. How many debates are there? Are there actual elections, or do they just cancel primaries? Do they funnel money through the states to the corporatist candidate that they prefer, et cetera? And Rahm Emanuel is, on top of everything else, is a giant loser. He lost 1,000 seats nationwide when he was in charge. 1,000 Democratic seats. It's a spectacular record of failure. The only reason why the establishment wants him in is because they don't care about winning. All they care about is the money. And they're like, oh, this guy's corrupt enough to get us more money, which will then squander in these elections, but all our consulting classes will get rich. And that's what that's why that DNC fight is so important. All right, Joseph, thank you so much for joining us. Everybody check out Our Revolution, doing good work, bringing economic populism back. Let's do it. I love it and I appreciate it.
Thanks, Cenk. Be well.
You too.